Now I'm going to try to answer some of the midterm questions in case that you have some doubts and try to show you how you would have answered some of those questions. Okay, which of the following statements about ADP and ATP are true or is true? So first, let's go through all the questions and try to see which one are correct and which one are not correct. So here, ADP contain more energy than ATP. So here, right away is wrong because we know that ATP has 3 phosphate while ADP has 2 phosphate. Then AMP has only 1. This is monophosphate. So adenosine triphosphate, adenosine diphosphate, adenosine monophosphate. So this, and of course, this one has more energy, the ATP than the ADP, and the ADP has more energy than AMP. So A is wrong. Now ADP have 2 positive charges. This is wrong. As I will show you in a second, it has actually, yes, it has a tail with 2 charges, with 2 phosphors, but it will have 3 charges. Yeah, and I will show you in a second that it will have 1, 2, and 3 oxygens. So this one is wrong, and I will show you in a slide that. Following the hydrolysis, ATP can release 1 phosphate, whereas ADP cannot. So this is right away wrong. ADP can release 2 phosphates, yeah, and ADP can release 1 more. So yeah, that one is wrong. And ATP can have 4 negative charges. This is right, and I will show you in a diagram that this is the correct one. So as you can count here, there's 1, 2, 3, and here you see 4 negative charges. And for the ADP, if you remove this one, you will have, well, let me remove this, just color it again. So you will have, now this one will be free, so you will have 1, 2, and 3. So this is wrong. So the only possible answer that is correct is D. Okay, this is a question that we answer in the class. And I just want to tell you something. Sometimes the textbook, they they make these very long questions to show you something or to ask you something that is very simple. Here, they are asking you about a hormone that have an effect. So we have a hormone, and here what they are asking you is, you know, you have a protein. Hormones are generally proteins, and the function of this protein. They're asking you how you mimic the function of this protein, and if you remember, the function of proteins depend on the shape, on the 3 dimension. So here, the answer will be just this long question is just it. They are not asking you about the other things. They are not asking you about the oxygen, carbon, the covalent bonds of the hormone. They are just asking you about as the hormone. You know that many hormones are proteins, and that the proteins the function depend on the 3 dimensional shape. They are just making sure that you understand that you understand that there are different levels of structure, and that the function is determined by the 3 dimensional shape. Okay, to answer this question, I want that you read it and try to look what is the main component that it give you already the answer. There is a very important part of the question that give you the answer. So stop the video and try to read it and try to see if you see where is the answer. Okay, maybe you noticed that this part in parentheses is the most important one because they are telling you that this is the definition of an structural isomer. So this is very important. And so they are asking you what of the statements is true. Uh, and they said that these molecules and other like them are monomers building blocks of polypeptides. So here they are telling you they have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. So, as you can see here, so this could be all this glucose and fructose. So all these molecules could be here. So maybe you know them by heart. That was not necessary. You just need to read this and think about it. So first of all, these molecules are structural isomers of each other. That is the question number 8. As we said, this is correct. Is an acid and B is a base. There is no indication that this is true, and they are not talking here about the concentration. So this is not, there is not information uh, to clearly talk about that. All of the above is true. Let's look at this ones. Both molecules are hydrophobic. We know that these carbohydrates, when you have all this hydrogen and all these oxygens here, and this OH can form hydrogen bonds. So this is very likely to be wrong. So this one will be wrong, and this is wrong. So the best answer will be 8. So if you don't remember, you can go to the video lecture and check what is a structural isomer. Here there are examples of a structural isomer. All of them have the same molecular formula, but if you see the branching of each one is very different. So this is why they are called their isomers, and in particular structural isomers. In that particular case, I was the question talk about glucose and fructose. There is also galactose, and all of those are structural isomers. I didn't want to ask you in particular about the structural, that you remember where all the hydrogens and all the OH, but I wanted that you know that they are structural isomer and that that is an important property. So remember, the answer will be A. Okay, here this question again is a very long question. I want that you stop the video and try to think from this long question, what is the key information and what is the key question? What is the where they give a lot of information? What is the question? Okay, so the question is here: what is the lowest taxonomic group that both of these species belong? And they talk about two species, this one and this one. So here is this question is very easy. Here they are already giving you, when you have 1 and 2, these two Latin names, they are species. So this here there are two species. So this is the most specific part of these taxonomic groups. And here the common group will be the genus, and I will explain that in a second. So definitely it will be the genus, not the species, because here each one is a different species. And phylum is one that is one of the largest. Family is also relatively large. Common name, that doesn't make sense. So let me go in the next slide and remind you and show you where in your textbook they talk about that. So here you can see where you can find the answer in your textbook. If you remember this diagram, here they show you, I don't want that you remember all these names. If you want to become a taxonomist, you will remember that by heart. But here I just wanted that you remember that there are different taxonomic levels. The domain is the largest one, while species is the smallest one. And if you go here in the genus, here they're talking about all these birds, the ursus, this type of birds, and they have a compound names. And here the same thing happened in the question. You have this, they have this in common because they belong to the same genus. And what makes them different is this part, the next section. That is why they are a species. So what is the lowest taxonomic grouping in that both these species belong? Here it will be the genus, and here also will be the genus. Okay, here I was, as I show you in the video, and in the class, I generally don't ask chemical structures. But I told you that I was going to possibly ask one of these ones. In biochemistry, you will have to memorize many of these chemical structures. And in this case, I just want that you remember that, of course, this is a pentose. Here is you find a pentose. So this is not going to be glucose, maltose, galactose. It has to be one of these that is very important. So if you see, this will be the desoxyribose, and if you have an OH, it will be the ribose. So here it will be the ribose. And this molecule is the component of the RNA that I'm sure that you know. Here, the key to answer this question is that you remember the type of glycosidic linkage that there are in carbohydrates. So read the question and try to see if you spot the most important part of the question. So here they are asking you about starch, and they are asking you about cellulose, that are both polymers, and they tell you that they are connected and they have this glycosidic linkage, and they give you more information, and they're asking you what is the difference between these two. And here the question, if you know a little bit about that, you know that is very easy. Why? Because you only have alpha and beta glycosidic linkage. So the answer in this question, it will be A, because you have here alpha and here you have beta. Here delta is wrong, here gamma is wrong, here delta is wrong, here gamma is wrong. So the answer was actually very easy. If you remember that there were only two types of glycosidic linkage, and if you go to the video lectures, you will find that we talk about this alpha and beta glycosidic linkage, and here you can see this is the starch and this is the cellulose, and how this type of linkage make these different structures of carbohydrates. So again, the answer was very easy. It was just this one. And why? Because the other ones doesn't exist. Okay, this question also looks complicated, but it's actually very easy. I want that you read it and think about how to solve it. And before you solve it, try to think about this. If you have one amino acid and you add another amino acid and you form this, they have this peptide bond, you need to do that. You will have to release water. So that will be key. You have a dehydration reaction. So think about that and try to solve the question. So the answer of the question, I will show it in the next slide. And the answer will be this one. And there are multiple ways to answer it. I will try to do it in a way that I find much simpler. So here, if you have two of the same amino acid, so you will add, I'm just adding two carbons and two carbons, I will have 4, 5 hydrogens, so I will have 10. Here I have 4, and here I have 2. I'm just adding because I am just have to join these two. However, when I join them, there is something called dehydration reaction, so I will remove the water, and here this is gone, and as this is gone, I will just have to remove the hydrogen and the oxygen from here. So carbons will be the same. Hydrogen, I have 2 less, so it will be 8 instead of 10. And I have 1 less oxygen, so it will be 3, and nitrogen will be the same. So in this way, you can find that the answer was very easy. You just have to remember that there is something called dehydration reaction, and in this case, it was very easy to answer. So again, this is the answer, and you can have tried to do it in multiple ways. I just like this one because it was very easy. So if you remember, there are 3 type of elements: ones that have represent the 96%, or ones that represent only the 4%, and or ones that are just traces. And I'm going to show you a slide that remind you where in the web in your video lectures are also where in your textbook you can find the answer, but they are asking you for these ones. So here you just have to remember that carbon is we have carbon, that carbon is one that is in the 96%, similar to oxygen and hydrogen. So this is wrong. Here the same thing, we have the same problem. Here we have oxygen and hydrogen, so this is already wrong. Calcium is definitely in the 4%, but the other ones are wrong. So the answer here, it will be C: calcium, potassium, phosphorus, and sulfur. So let's see why. So if you remember this table of your textbook, here they tell you that the ones that have the 4% and this one: phosphorus, sulfur, calcium, and potassium, while the ones that are more popular, the ones that are distributed, that make up more of the living matter, are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. And here are the ones that are the trace elements. So again, the answer was C, because most of the other answers were the one that belong to the 96%. Okay, I will answer more questions. If you have more questions about the test, later I will post more answers, and just let me know if you have a particular question and we can solve it together. Have a good day, and if you have any question, just let me know.